something I always find interesting is how business owners make their space welcoming to clients.
Well, everything's open. I like my big open windows.
Yeah.
You don't feel trapped. You don't feel like you're in a little box either. When you walk in, we're wide open.
So what would you say is like the average amount to be in the chair? And then what's the longest you've ever worked on like one single piece for?
Oh, I'll say the average right now, it used to be 20 minutes. Nowadays,
Really?
that's my average tattoo is about an hour, hour and a half.
Okay. Do you have the number off the top of your head that you've ever worked, like the longest you've ever worked on a single piece?
Oh, gosh. I've got one lady. Geez.
Welcome to Green Country Conversations, the podcast where we hear the stories and learn about the people that make Northeast Oklahoma truly great. I'm your host, Maverick Pitchford, and today we're diving into the fascinating world of artistry and individuality. Our guest has been tattooing for over 2 decades and has left his mark, literally and figuratively, on Green Country. But before we do so, I'd like to take a minute and thank our sponsors. This is where the sponsored portion of the podcast is supposed to be, but we don't have a sponsor yet. Please help us avoid this awkwardness next time. Please sponsor this podcast. If you're interested, reach out to me, Maverick@bisonridgeinsurance.com. Joining us today is Kelly Gresham, the owner of Big Bad Wolf Tattoo in Tulsa, Oklahoma. With over 23 years of experience as a tattoo artist, Kelly is a master of turning stories, memories, and emotions into stunning pieces of body art. In addition to nearly 5 years as a business owner, Kelly brings a wealth of life experiences and a deep passion for artistry and personalization. So sit back, relax, and get ready to hear from one of Tulsa's most creative and inspiring business owners. Kelly, welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Definitely. I'm super excited to get to hear from your side of the world, because this is not an area that I've ever experienced on the tattoo side and artistically. And so I think there's going to be a really interesting conversation. I'm really, really excited to kind of dive in here. First, we'll get started with a couple icebreaker questions. So if you were stranded on a desert island and you could only bring 3 items with you to survive, what would they be? And let's exclude food and water. Let's say this desert island, you get there and there's already food and water there, so you don't have to bring those. What would you bring with you? What kind of stuff what can you not live without?
Oh, gosh, that's a tough one because, some of my basics I keep in my backpack is a good, solid, full-tang knife.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. That's a tough one because a lot of your basics you can find real quick. Hopefully.
Right. Maybe is there any books that you're like, I have to read, I want to have this book, it's entertaining to me, or maybe a game, anything like that?
Oh, gosh. I keep myself so entertained. Because books are unlimited. I have a whole storage unit of books.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, yeah, I love reading.
That's awesome.
Oh, gosh, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is one of my favorites. There's an undertone that helps the unconscious mind grow.
That's cool.
One of my favorites.
That's really good. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah,
I think that every person is going to have completely different answers to that, right? Like, I remember vividly, I got asked this question in an interview, and the guy was a very straight-laced, very no-nonsense type of guy, and I answered, normal stuff. Oh, I'd bring the Bible, those type of things. And he was like, well, I'd bring toilet paper. Wouldn't you want to bring toilet paper? And I was like, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, now that you say that, I do think I would use that on the desert island. So it's always funny how people attack that question. So if you could tattoo any historic figure, who would it be, and what would maybe a design have that you might come off the top of your head?
Oh, gosh. The first name was Abraham Lincoln for some reason.
Okay.
But mainly because I enjoy the conversations while I'm sitting with people.
Right.
And he would be one I'd love to just pick his brain.
Yeah, I bet there would be some interesting conversations coming out of that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because the one-on-one it changes.
Yeah, a couple episodes ago we had Blaine Ford. He's a barber in Broken Arrow, and he kind of said the same thing. Like when you're sitting there cutting people's hairs or tattooing people, in your sense, the conversations you have are priceless, right? And a lot of times I think that for some people, like this is like from what I've heard and what I've experienced, it's almost like a therapeutic. They're coming to talk to you about their problems and all those things, and a lot of times they just want you to be a listening ear, is what I've heard, right?
Ink therapy.
Yeah, ink therapy. That is awesome. That's awesome. Who or what has been your biggest inspiration in the tattoo world?
Oh gosh. I had, when I first started on the professional side of it, Dale Ross was one of my big impetus.
Okay.
Um, that
Is he a pretty well known figure in the tattoo world?
In that area, he
Okay.
just old. We got into it at a young age, running away from home, getting into the biker community, and that's how he got into it and
Yeah.
airbrushing. Just some of the stories and the little back movement techniques he'd teach me that you just can't learn from people.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that having someone like that who's been around the block and knows those extra tricks that they're not going to teach you in like a traditional, tattooing school or any type of your industry school, are really, really important. I've
Yeah,
learned so much more from my mentors than I ever did taking a insurance licensing exam, right? You learn a lot more with those hands-on experience, I think.
yeah. And then working for Cliff James as long as I did, I learned a lot business wise as well from him.
Yeah,
So
because
that
that's a completely different side of it, right? That a lot of people maybe don't like. Because I imagine there's a tattoo artistry side, right, where you have to be a good artist, you have to be able to do that stuff. But then also, if you're going to own a shop, like that's a completely different side of the coin.
Oh yeah, yeah, different way of looking at things. You have to
Yeah,
go from right brain to left brain, and a lot of
yeah,
us just freak on that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I am very business minded, obviously, and then now getting into the content game, more and more so. Like it's a fun challenge for me because it breaks up. How I usually think about things, right? And you have to be very
Yeah,
creative and all those types of things. And I really enjoy that.
yeah, it does help on the business side having that creative bit,
Right.
but just the staying with the boy that was a
Hmm.
whole new education for me.
Yeah, right. And I think that, like you said, with the creative side of things, being able to use that towards your business side of the coin, you're going to be able to attack things in a different way than what someone who maybe just has a business degree and's only ever worked in business, because they're going to be, more like, oh, well, this is how it's traditionally done. You're going to be like, I'm not worried about how it's traditionally done. I'm worried about how my brain works out this problem. And I would imagine as a creative, like your brain probably works it out a lot differently than, someone else's. So,
Yeah, and my other background in the versions of psychology and sociology I traipsed down because that's my other love.
yeah,
Helps helps redirect the way I look at things as well.
right.
It
Exactly.
teaches me some unique skills.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What is one thing about tattooing that you think people maybe misunderstand?
Um, oh gosh, basically the art side. Everyone's um, expects us to just pop out quick designs like oh, just pull it off Pinterest, and we're like, no,
Yeah,
we're artists. We don't want
yeah,
to. We're not copy paste. It's like we have
yeah,
pencils. We want to be creative for you, not copy paste. But
right. Yeah, and I think that adds a lot of that personalization, like we talked about at the beginning, was that, I mean, I would
yeah,
imagine it doesn't take the most artistic person, like you said, to just take it off of Pinterest or off of, any website, but you're like, well, let me add some personal flares to this.
yeah, and that's where sometimes the language barrier comes in because it's hard because we're visual a lot of
Right.
time.
Yeah.
So we're trying to communicate that way, and a lot of our clients are auditory, so they're trying to explain to us in this area, or they're internally trying to kinesthetically explain this, and we're not following it. So that's where the little problem comes in is the sharing of their idea to us.
Yeah, right. You have to take that and flip it into a way that you can present it in a tattoo, right? Which is
Yes.
probably a skill in and of itself, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. Is the communication skill with art because they're using their perspective to give you
Hmm.
this design, and you're trying to. Yeah, that's the frustrating part at times.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm sure you're a pro at it. So let's get into your personal artistic journey here. So I know in the pre-intro, you mentioned that you were in London, the UK, all of that area, when you
Yeah.
were younger. So how did your time in London studying art there help shape your perspective as an artist?
Um. Oh gosh, at the time the atmosphere in London was going through a shift as well in that
Hmm.
area in Europe. I got there in the late '80s, '88. My art teacher at a community college helped me get my foot in the door where she got her master's degrees at.
That's awesome.
So I jumped on it. But it was a lot of fun. It really changed my perspective on things because I went from a small Midwest town to
Yeah.
London, and kind of broadened my opinion, my views,
Yeah.
as well as straightening myself up because that was a whole new experience.
Right.
And politically, there was a lot of changes. Yeah, Germany was going through a lot. In fact, which was for me a great time to be there because I got to go to Germany when the wall came down.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that was a trip there. So there was all that going on, as well as a little shift in the art community, the
Uh-huh.
way things were going on there. So that was pretty neat. I got
That's
to
cool.
change my views and experiences.
Yeah, it's easy whenever grow up and let's say, even America, not even just Oklahoma or the Midwest, right? When you get outside of this, it's like, oh, there's a lot of world out there, and there's a lot of different ways that people cut this pie, and the way I do it isn't always the right way, and it sounds like going over there really opened that up for you.
Yeah, because you don't have your same fallbacks.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
get used to, I can call my family
Yeah.
or a friend, and now all of a sudden you're on your own.
And especially, you said you were there in the 80s, right? So especially
Yeah.
like it's not like you had an iPhone you could FaceTime them on, you know what I mean?
Oh,
So
not at
so
all. Yeah.
it was completely different at that time.
Yeah. You have to remember your country code.
Yeah,
And it's like,
that's funny.
oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's hilarious. What role does your love for classic cars and motorcycles play in your creative life?
It's there. It's a subtle background. The motorcycle makes it easy to communicate with so many people now.
Right.
Um, my car love, that's a little different because I love the classic made cars, which is where my love of hearses have always come in because
Okay.
they were all custom made up until the 80s.
Really? Wow.
And my personal favorite is my 73 Cadillac that I have. It's an old combo, hearse ambulance
Wow.
both.
That's
And
cool.
and they just came stock, and it was a lot of them were handmade. There was a lot of love put into those. The
Right.
construction, the sewing, the curtains, the everything into it, and that's I appreciate the care that goes into that.
Right. And I would imagine it gives each car a little bit more personality, right? Because it's not just a cookie cutter type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, you can line the same years and makes
That's
of each
cool.
one next, and they're all different.
That's
And
amazing. That's amazing. So you had mentioned that you've obviously had some unique experiences, right? You witnessed or you were around there whenever the Berlin Wall came down. You were going to punk clubs in the UK.
yeah,
How did those stories influence your art? I know we've kind of already touched on it, but is it kind of
oh
the
yeah,
backbone that sets everything apart for you? Because obviously everyone has their own experiences, right? And those experiences inevitably, you know, shape how you outlook on things. But I would have also imagined that it also shapes how you draw things and you conceive and perceive those ideas that people were talking about earlier. That we were talking about how
yeah.
you kind of get that across.
Yeah, there's times when I look at a lot of my rough drawings, I definitely see the punk influence. I
That's
still
cool.
have I love the harsh lines at times and just, solid blacks with some color thrown in.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm still a product of the 80s, so I have a lot of that style of art, that I
Right.
enjoy. From the
That's
Julie
amazing.
Bells to the, that type of realism as well
Yeah.
as that style of tattooing from that period.
Yeah, and it's cool to think about how each person has their own experiences, and it's kind of like making a cake, right? That each person maybe have the same ingredients, but they may have different portions of each ingredient in there, and so how that cake is baked is all based off of those life experiences. So it's cool, and then your art is the way of being able to put that out into the world. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I still follow a lot of the basic tattoo, the old school tattoo rules,
Yeah,
play shape and that. But other than that, it's like, let's have fun with it. Because some of those
right.
rules are there for a reason, for aesthetics, for
Yeah,
visuals. The rest of them,
right.
it's like, we can play with those.
Yeah, exactly. That's super cool. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self when you started tattooing, what would it be?
Oh gosh, don't let others influence your perspective because everybody, if you draw, there's always somebody that's better. Everybody walks in the door knows somebody that's better. I'm happy, then talk to them. But you're here to talk to me. And a lot of people will let that get to them. It's like, it's just human nature. Don't take
Right.
it personal. Never take it personal.
That's the way it is in any industry, right? Any industry you
Oh,
step in,
yeah.
there's always going to be people you can compare against. And
Yeah.
as a
And
young entrepreneur, I fall into, I've seen myself fall into comparing people's mile 20 to my mile 1. And you're like, oh, they're so much further ahead. I can't compare where they're at versus where I'm starting. I can't start. I just can't compare that. And it sounds like you're saying the same thing where, there's going to be people who maybe have more experience or even you have the same experience, but they attack a certain piece of art a certain way versus you'll go at a completely different way. But you can't let that hold you back from doing it.
oh yeah, yeah. I still catch myself doing it. It's like, oh wait, stop, back
Yeah.
up,
What's nice
reframe.
is you notice it and you catch it. That's the important part.
Yeah.
So let's get into a little bit just your life as a tattoo artist, right? What originally inspired you? What originally inspired you to get into tattooing?
It was just the way. Well, I originally got into graphics, and
Okay.
it just didn't feel anything. Tattooing had always been on the outskirts. In London, I got into it a little bit more, tattooing in the background and stuff as I went on to the commercial and graphics. And then when I moved back to the States, I got into the graphics and the commercial aspect, and it was too cut and dry.
Yeah.
Everyone's giving me exact guidelines to follow, and I'm like, that's cool and all, but now this is stifled.
Yeah.
I want a little freedom here. And situations came up, and I took a hiatus and worked for Brass Eagle for a minute in the paintball gun department. And
Okay. That's cool.
after that, jumped into tattooing. I got lucky and got into a place after my 90 days were up at Brass Eagle and
Cool.
hooked up with Cliff James at Eyewitness. And it's like, just put my head down and started in. It's like, here's my opportunity. Let's run
That's
with it.
cool. That's super cool.
And it's been a fun adventure.
That's awesome, man. I love to hear that. After 23 years in the industry, what has kept your passion alive? Because I imagine there's been highs and lows and ebbs and flows of like, I love this industry, well, maybe I'm not as passionate, but what has kind of kept that fire burning inside of you across all those years?
My regular clients
Yeah.
that have become more friends than clients. It's when I sat down and realized this person just drove across 4 states,
Wow.
spend this amount of time to talk and for me to draw. That's when it kind of clicks in. It's like, yeah, stop worrying. Just
Yeah.
just allow it, and
That's cool to hear
that's
that
what
it's the
it's
human
like.
connection outside of all of it that really has
Yeah,
driven it for you. That's awesome.
yeah. Because if you take it as a whole, at times, it's like any business, ups and
Yeah.
downs.
Yeah, for sure.
And because it's individual related, it's really easy to let that get the better of you.
Yeah.
I watch it in the shop with the other guys as well, and it's like, no, let's start, and then my NLP kicks in, and I start slipping language in on. All right, let's lift yourselves back up a little.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's the individuals keep me going.
That's cool. That's amazing to hear that. I would imagine across the years that you've been in this industry, there's been a lot of changes. I- Obviously, being younger, I think that probably the whole time I've had a concept of people's perception on tattoos and tattooing has probably been a little bit more accepted than probably when you started. So, what has that kind of shift been like? Because I mean, you see now guys that are business professionals, and it's not from my viewpoint, it's not frowned upon to have a tattoo in the business space. It's you have these guys that have sleeves, they're wearing it, with their t-shirts, their polos at work. So I would imagine when you started that probably wasn't the case. So what has kind of that shift been like across these years?
Yeah, it's well, here in the States it shifted from the time I left and came back.
Yeah,
It was more popular when I left. It was very underground.
right?
There was very few shops. Even here, Oklahoma was still illegal.
Really?
Missouri, there was when I moved back, there was hardly any shops in Missouri. They were still trying to sneak up a little bit underground
Yeah.
shops in Joplin and that area where I was. And then you had your big shops in the big cities, but it was still kind of quiet. And then I started getting in, and I used my graphics job to kind of open up
Get
a
your foot in
little
the door, right?
little
Yeah.
little hole. And my boss there helped me get a shop going, my little personal shop, in
Wow.
Neosho. And then I just kind of went from there. And then when I quit graphics full time and went into tattooing full time, it was just, I
That's
went,
amazing.
I hooked up with Cliff James, got a real apprenticeship instead of my stunt, and really improved my game a lot with it.
That's super cool. When do you think that, because now I feel like it's not even it's not, from what I see and what I hear, it's not taboo at all to have tattoos. And so when do you think that shift has really happened? Like in the last 5 years, 10, is it still like, do you feel like it's still like growing to where people are more accepting, or do you think it's like, this is fine?
It's
Like no
it's
one
an
really thinks anything of it.
yeah, it's business wise too because I really don't know any other way to put it. You still have the good old boy system.
Right. Yeah,
You
definitely.
know, you've got that echelon that's like, well, you can have all these tattoos, but you better hide them when you get to this level.
Yeah.
You still have that undercurrent.
Right.
But since TV, they started putting it on TV, that always opens everything
Opens
up.
everything up.
Hit the
Right.
media, and then everyone, it's like takes all the taboos off, and that helped a lot. People
Yeah.
start,
Yeah.
quit.
Because I think people my age, like in their 20s, like I would almost relate with someone more who has tattoos, right? Because
Yeah,
I'm not as intimidated in the fact of like, oh, this is someone who has completely buttoned up. Not that you can't be with tattoos, but like they're someone who's creative and they're willing to, put out what they think about things. Like I've talked about with my wife before getting, the way my brain works, and I don't have any tattoos. I know how it works. When I get one, I'm gonna want a whole sleeve. Like I even was like, I wanted one on my arm, and I was like, I think I texted her the next day. I was like, well, when I finish that, like I'll do the next one. She was like, whoa, like we were talking about just one. And I think that people my age are like, it. I didn't even think anything. I don't think in my sense of being a business owner, like I don't think that that would affect me at all. And so I think it's a cool way that the culture has kind of just accepted it, and it's cool that you were kind of through that whole ride. Like I naive me didn't even know it was illegal to have tattooing in Oklahoma, and now you're running a shop here. So it's cool that you've seen the whole gamut of the system there.
yeah. It was pretty interesting because the guy I worked for, Cliff, he'd always wanted to open up in Oklahoma, so he
Uh huh.
opened up. He went from Florida and opened up in Springfield, and then he opened up in Joplin, and it just kind of waited. And then when it looked like it was going to open up here, he opened up a piercing
Jumped
shop.
on it. That's cool.
And so we did body piercing here in Tulsa, and then he'd make
Okay.
appointments to come see me and the guys in Joplin.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that had a little entertaining twist with the local PD.
I
And
bet, right?
we
You
got a lot of free advertising
found a
on
loophole there,
that.
I'd imagine.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's super cool. What advice would you give to someone thinking about starting in the tattooing industry today?
Well, nowadays you can't just come from high school with as an art
Right.
because all you're taught in school is your basics, and it's not even a solid foundation. It's just your basics. So that's why a lot of people have a hard time keeping up with a lot of artists nowadays, because you can only learn so much off of YouTube as well.
Right. Yeah.
And now we've got graphic artists into tattooing. We've got fine artists tattooing.
Yeah.
We have all these different trained artists coming in, and it's like, if nothing else, pick up Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain. That's my favorite book. I always refer artists to
Okay.
it. Artists. When I used to substitute teach in that's my book, foundation book I use for art, because
That's
it's
cool.
got all your great stuff in it to jump from.
That's really cool. That's amazing. So now obviously you're doing more than just tattooing, like we talked about. You're doing that business owner side. So let's talk about you being a business owner and kind of what that's like. What made you decide to open up your own tattoo shop? And what has that experience been like?
Um, it's been entertaining. I was a little luckier than most because coming up the way I did with Eyewitness, when Cliff was ready to retire, we had a little discussion. So I kind of, in a way, I lucked into it, but I feel like I've been busting my butt to earn my way
I was
into
gonna say, I mean, it sounds like you did a lot to get there. I don't think it was just something you just
it. Yeah,
completely lucked
yeah, there's
into.
a little loyalty involved,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but
That's awesome.
but but just staying with it and learning. But it's changed a lot over the years too, business wise. In fact, the best thing I did business wise for myself was step away from the traditional and to get into NLP a bit, neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay.
That helped bring my game up as a business owner and helped me get out of the tattooer drawing mentality.
Right. Yeah, because like we talked about, it's completely different, different sides of the coin, right? So you have to kind of approach it differently.
Oh, yeah. And I was still trying to run like you would in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And that form of advertising just doesn't work anymore.
Doesn't work anymore. Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's cool that you were able to figure that out and then make that switch. So something I always find interesting is how business owners make their space welcoming to clients, right? Because I would imagine a first-time tattoo, person, like someone getting a tattoo for the first time, they're going to walk in and they're going to be nervous, right? And it's something that's something that even I got completely different example, but I started doing jujitsu last month. And I was so nervous because it was something that I didn't know anything about. I didn't know anyone there, and you're walking in blind. And I would imagine, like, if I walked into your tattoo shop, like, I would be nervous because I don't have any tattoos. I've never been in a tattoo shop. So kind of how do you approach making Big Bad Wolf Tattoo? How do you approach making it welcoming and unique for your clients?
Well, everything's open. I like my big open windows.
Yeah.
You don't feel trapped. You don't feel like you're in a little box either. When you walk in, we're wide open. We
That's
don't
awesome.
have little rooms. You're not going to a little box with a door to get tattooed.
Yeah.
You can visit with people getting work done.
That's cool.
And a lot of our clients enjoy that, talking with first timers. Oh, yeah, it's not so bad. Ow, ow, ow.
That's so funny.
And it keeps the banter up too. It's not, all secretive, and
yeah,
we keep it.
Yeah, because I would imagine if you're walking into a shop that's like, maybe damp is not the right word, but dark and damp and eerie, you're a lot more nervous. Whereas you walk in and it's open and everyone's like, "Hey man, what's up?" Like it's a lot more welcoming when that happens.
Yeah, it's we have a variety of music going on in the background.
That's cool.
The plus is it's in the background. It's not domineering.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to
still
hear
have conversations.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important.
And it still allows for those that enjoy just, tuning out. Put your headphones in. You just sit and tune out while you're getting work done as well.
That's cool. That's amazing. What is one lesson you've learned as a business owner that maybe you didn't expect, right?
Oh, gosh. Getting out there, getting your message out there has changed so much. Everyone's competing on the same areas, and it's and who can scream the loudest and be more, and it's like just be yourself, be human. That's what people want.
That's amazing. I think that a lot of times for me being in my 20s, since we were 13, we had phones in our hands, on social media and all that stuff. And so I feel like my age group, maybe a little bit older than me, definitely younger than me, we can call out people who are being phony online very quickly. And then whenever you have people who are being themselves and are being transparent, then it's like, oh, those are the people I want to be around with. Those are the people I want to follow. Those are the people's content or businesses I want to work with because my BS meter is very quick at detecting things like that. You know what I mean? So I think what you're saying is exactly right. Authenticity is the best way to break through that noise online.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. They walk in, they're like, oh, yeah, these are the people now. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If they see you on social media and they see you in the store and they're like, oh, this is the same guy that I see, right? That's really important. So what's your vision for the future of Big Bad Wolf Tattoo? Like what's your grand scheme? Are you guys wanting to expand? Like what are you planning on in the future?
Well, we'll probably expand a little bit with the piercing side.
Okay.
Because the way I work with the gentleman over that is I just kind of let him run the piercing edge. So we'll probably do a little more branching out there soon. But as far as the shop goes, we're still, keeping. I've got a young, in fact, I say young apprentice. He's ready to full blown tattoo.
That's awesome.
And being a Hmong, he specializes in the Orientals
Wow, that's cool.
traditional as well. And he's been fun to work with and get him up to snuff. And he's really having a blast.
That's awesome.
He's doing
So
great.
outside of yourself, how many people tattoo in your shop?
I've got 2 artists and 2 piercers.
2 artists and 2 piercers. Okay, cool.
And in fact, I also run, because I jokingly call ink therapy, and everyone's hit me with it.
Yeah.
So I've been running my therapy side out of the shop as well too.
Okay.
So that's going to be expanding a bit more as well.
That's super cool. I think that that's a unique approach to it, right? Not every tattoo shop you go into can actually, I've always heard people talk about, oh, it's therapy when you get a tattoo, but you're like, no, this actually is therapy. Like, let me show you what I can do. That's super cool. So now, a couple fun questions just about your industry. What is your favorite tattoo design you've ever created? Could you describe it to me? Is there a unique story that comes with it, or maybe there is a unique story you can think of that comes with the tattoo? What is something that works for that?
Oh gosh, I've got a few. I've got one that's kind of X-rated that was entertaining, but some 1%ers out of Kansas. But oh gosh, I've had some fun ones lately. I turned the character of Esmeralda, I think, from The Little Mermaid.
Oh yeah. Is that
Into
the evil, like the evil stepmommer mother or
Yeah,
whatever? Yeah.
I turned her into a pinup for a lady's forearm, and we'll be
Wow, that's
finishing
cool.
that up next week. That was fun. I'm looking
That's
forward
awesome.
to that. Yeah,
That's awesome.
stuff like that's a lot of blast.
That's cool. What is just because I love the UFC. One of my favorite fighters is this guy named Tom Aspinall. He has tattoos all over his body. He has a
Yeah.
back piece that's his whole back, and he mentioned an amount of time that he spent to get that tattoo. So, what would you say is like the average amount to be in the chair, and then what's the longest you've ever worked on like one single piece for?
Oh, I'll say the average right now. It used to be 20 minutes. Nowadays,
Really?
that's my average tattoo is about an hour, hour and a half.
Okay. Is that because people are
Um,
getting like more detailed tattoos now, or just like what do you
yeah,
think
they're
the
going a
time
little.
span is?
Yeah, they're going a little larger.
Okay.
A lot of times they're picking small stuff, but it's got so many lines that the picture's small, but your skin doesn't work like paper. So,
Right.
but
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it's the average tattoo's gotten larger because they're not trying to hide them so much.
Right, exactly. That's
Yeah.
cool. Do you have the number off the top of your head that you've ever worked, like the longest you've ever worked on a single piece?
Oh gosh, I've got one lady. I've started out here, and it goes to her toes,
Oh,
front
wow.
and back.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's we
Do you know how many hours that took?
oh geez, it was stretched out over several years.
Right.
We do pieces here, pieces
Right,
there.
yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, the guy that Tom Aspinall was talking about, he has uh I guess it would be an Oriental, it's like a Chinese dragon dog, I think is what it's called, on his
Oh,
back.
Rudolph.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And
Yeah.
it was 50 hours, which I felt like was a long
Yeah.
time. I mean, like that seems like to me, like as someone who's never done like that. Now, obviously, I know it's broken up in sessions, but still, yeah, that's a lot of time to do one thing
Yeah.
on your body. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
It's a commitment. When you
Yeah,
get
for
to pick
sure.
one. Yeah.
For sure. And then you always hear people say like once you get one, like you get the itch for another. And like I told you earlier,
Yeah.
I went from literally 1 hour planning one tattoo to then I was like, well, how can I map out a whole sleeve? But my wife told me my personality doesn't match a sleeve, so we'll see if I pull that off or not. What's your one piece of advice for someone considering their first tattoo? Like I said, don't have one, been on the fence for a couple years now. So what would be your one piece of advice for me?
Get what you want where you want.
Yeah,
The all the I hate tattoos. I got this one. I don't like it. 99.9% somebody else picked it out for them
right.
and told them where to get it, and they're letting everybody else decide for them. When people come in and they're texting so and so, do you think this? Do you think that? Kind of
Yeah,
signing off of you. I'm going to talk you into thinking about it and coming back later, just for your own
yeah.
personal health.
Well, because like, I mean, there's obviously things that are a bigger commitment than a tattoo, but I mean, it's a pretty big commitment because it's going to be on your
Yeah.
body. So you need to make
Oh
sure
yeah.
it's something you want.
Yeah. We play for keeps. I
Yeah,
know you see a lot of tattoo removals on TV, but yeah,
yeah,
very few people sit through those.
yeah. Do you have to go to a personal specialized shop to do tattoo removals or a cover up, or could you do that at your shop?
No, I recommend going to someone trained in that. You're
Yeah.
dealing with 2 different colored lasers. You're
Hmm.
dealing with tissue, the moisture, the water in tissue, lasers. Yeah, there's so much that can
A
go
completely
wrong.
different science, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. We're not trained. It's like cosmetic tattooing. We're not trained in cosmetic tattooing either.
Right.
That's why you see people with orange eyebrows instead of nice ones, and
Yeah,
clown makeup instead
yeah,
of.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
funny.
don't let us do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, guys, that's great stuff. Let's get into our green country recommendations. These are the two questions we ask in every single podcast. Firstly, I'll ask, what does a perfect day look like for you in green country? Do you have something in mind? Maybe an activity, people you're hanging out with. What does your perfect day look like?
Oh gosh, if I'm not working, I enjoy just throwing a pack on it. There's
Yeah,
some beautiful places to just go hike and
that's
get
amazing.
get out in nature. So many areas through here. Um,
That's good stuff.
Shoot, just for a little day walks out by the zoo, out in that little park out there. Nice little area just to go
Yeah.
walk.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that a lot of people don't think about that because Oklahoma's usually traditionally thought as just flat, right? But there's a
Yeah.
lot of areas you can really hit up around here that
Oh yeah.
are
Three
really good.
waterfalls is a good hike. Yeah, I
Which
can
one
go
did you
through
say?
three waterfalls.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
there's a lot of great places.
That's funny. I just saw on social media Turkey Mountain posted where people were snowboarding on the mountain last week with all the snow, and I was like, man, that looks like a real ski resort. I mean, you would never know the difference if they didn't say it. So it's
Yeah,
funny
it's
how
just right up. I can throw a rock from the RV park to Turkey Mountain. It's just
can,
right here.
can you really? That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's cool. So what is your hidden gem? What's one place in green country that you feel like maybe doesn't get enough shine that you feel like people should really know about?
Oh gosh, there's so many I've ran into from when I first got here. I was turned on to Fassler's Hall. They have a great three meat sausage.
Uh-huh.
Geez, so many great little places I've been turned on to and finding around here.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, yeah, right off the brain, Fassler's Hall. There
Where is
was.
that located? Do you know off the top of your head? Where's that at?
It was downtown Tulsa.
Is it still there
Um,
or no?
yes, yeah, it still
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Awesome. I
I
mean,
thought
three.
about going in there and being ornery with hypnosis and
That's hilarious. That's funny. So closing up here, what's one piece of advice you would give for anyone pursuing a creative career, right? Because I think that a lot of times creative careers probably, maybe not as much now, but in the past, have always kind of gotten a bad connotation with it. You know, you just need to get a traditional job. So what's one piece of advice as someone who has made a career out of being a creative? What is one piece of advice you have for someone who's looking to do that?
um, don't be afraid to do it as a background, as a secondary thing as you build it up. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I always, even when I started my other business secondary to tattooing, I put myself out there.
Yeah,
You know, if you fail when you're starting, fail spectacularly.
right.
That's what all my great instructors have taught me. Fail spectacularly. That way, you're not ashamed of it. You have fun with it, and you'll never forget that, and you'll never do that
That's
mistake again.
That's good stuff, man. That first piece of advice that you gave of not being afraid to do it as a secondary until it gets built up, I think is huge because um, in the culture we live in now, I think that, and this is something I talk about a lot on my content, is, people always want to talk about the highlights of being an entrepreneur, the highlights of, chasing your dreams and all that stuff, but don't be afraid to bite it off in bite-sized pieces, right? If you have to do it
Yes.
as a secondary career until you can get it built up, do that, but just do the thing, like take the leap, but don't be afraid or don't be ashamed if you have to do it, in those smaller steps. I think that's a really good piece of advice for people.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and even if you are, you run into little roadblocks, that's okay. That's a learning experience. Just reframe it.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Let us know, how can people learn more about Big Bad Wolf Tattoo, get in touch with you? What's the best way to kind of go about that?
Well, you can catch us on Instagram, Big Bad Wolf Tattoo. Our phone number is 918-622-6824. You can always reach us there. We're 7 days a week from noon to 9. And for those that have phobia fears or don't like the feel of tattooing, I'm the only one in the 4 states that does chemical-free painless tattooing.
Wow, that's amazing.
I've seen people break out from using the numbing gels and not
Yeah,
be able to get their tattoo done because they're all broke out.
right.
Well, using hypnosis, you don't have to worry about that. And it's
That's
still pain
amazing.
free. You talk, communicate, and it's great. People love it.
That's amazing. Well, Kelly, I appreciate it, man. This was a great
Thanks.
conversation, very eye-opening. Guys, if you have not done so yet, please subscribe and like the podcast. We post them every Thursday. We're coming at you with all kinds of different industries, and we'll really help you guys join the journey. Thanks so much.